Today we're going to be looking at the ENEA mt5 Expert Advisor. This video is sponsored by our free Golden Time Bomb Expert Advisor. Take your trading to the next level through automating the London breakout and the opening range breakout. Click the link in the description to download the EA completely for free. So this is part of the family of bots on MT5 that likes to use a lot of big AI words. And quite often these bots are not the best because it's more about making something seem fancy than having a real trading strategy. However, we never know. So let's dive in and see what's going on. So here apparently it's a state-of-the-art automatic trading system that uses ChatGPT 5 and a hidden Markov model. For whatever reason, people seem to love using the hidden Markov model in terms of their marketing language. This is meant to be, I believe, a continuous stochastic process, which would be a concept used in real quantitative finance. Like I think if you go look at people trying to price options, they do use hidden Markov models in order to achieve that. However, in an expert advisor form, it's not really something that you would usually see because we're not trying to model different types of paths and essentially look at all different outcomes to come up with the price of a derivative. We're just trying to figure out if we're going to go up or down. So I'm sure somebody who has more math background than me could probably tell you how one could tweak a hidden Markov model for more of a trading bot, but at least to my high level understanding, it's not usually the tool for the job. And also we don't really know how precisely they would kind of go about using that. So at least at first glance, it looks like something which is more meant to sell and that looks like a fancy marketing term than something which actually impacts trading performance. So now if we go and look at some of the other interesting points here, it actually is talking about regimes. And regimes are very important because if you trade many EAs, what you'll notice is that some types of systems do better in certain types of markets. This could be a trending market, a ranging market, uptrend, downtrend, and those usually correspond to something called market regimes. And a market regime simply means a style of market or a market behavior which is caused by an underlying fundamental factor. So that's usually what we mean when we say regime. So that's a real concept and something that's definitely quite valid. And here it says strategy, logic, and live operation. So here it's looking for the current regime, cool. And then it selects whether or not it's going to go with a trend, more of a volatility, or a sideways ranging function. And in doing so, it will adjust the stop loss accordingly. That actually makes a lot of sense, like pretty much having some sort of regime filter and changing the strategy to be able to actually do that. That actually makes a ton of sense. So if you were to legitimately do this, it would be a great trading idea. So it's quite a smart idea. So the guy who wrote this, I think, would have some sort of understanding of how trading works and how one would go about doing that. However, he's saying that he's using ChatGPT and the hidden Markov model to determine the regimes, and that it's quite good at context switching. The issue is that this clearly looks extremely fake. And if we look at the backtest as well, also very fake. It's turning $10,000 into $58 million within the span of a few years. So obviously you guys know that it's completely false, like you just can't do that. So the actual idea seems pretty cool, but I doubt he actually implemented that idea, at least in the backtest mode. Perhaps when you run it live, it kind of toggles into a different type of trading, but at least what I can see so far from more of the backtest, it's something that's pretty fishy. So let's go over here now. We can see the live signal has been running for a few months. And at first glance, it looks impressive. 85%, 3 months of profit. When you look at the amount of trades, it's like a very, very minute amount of trades. And then if you factor in that, it's actually running on WellTrade, which is everybody's favorite scam broker, which lets you manipulate the signals. This is completely false. So kind of like the pros right now for this bot is that the idea of regime detection is pretty cool. The cons are scam broker and fluffy AI language, which is commonly used to sell something which is not actually real AI. So overall, pretty interesting though. So now we can see that when we run a backtest, and I ran a backtest here on the fantastic Vantage broker, and we can see that it actually has a reasonably high drawdown of 38%, but we're turning $10,000 into $6.11 million. So the returns, this is just the span of a year. So the returns are absolutely ridiculous. Clearly something's fake. We can see that the win rate here is 98.95%. It does have a pretty significant inverted risk reward, which would be characteristic of a huge stop loss, and it's going both short and long. So something which is commonly used and which is fishy is just to only go long on gold during an uptrend, which is a way to kind of pretty much overfit to the past year's trending price action. I don't think that's the case. I think there's just some degree of extremely heavy over-optimization here. We're seeing some detachments in the equity from the balance line, which might be characteristic of martingale, but is not significant enough to actually be a true martingale. So my theory is either heavy over-optimization or likely some degree of history reading. So yeah, from what I can see so far, there's nothing really legitimate here. It's looking like too ridiculous. The actual strategy, it seems to be maybe a combination of breakout and mean reversion. So that could actually be matching what he's saying in the sales page, that depending on the regime, it can oscillate between more of a volatility strategy, between more of a mean reversion strategy, and between more of a, let's say more of a trend following. So actually, there could be something here, but the issue is the backtest is clearly totally fake and the signal is heavily manipulated. So I think this kind of goes into the broader category of bots like the Sinera and the Beatrix, where they heavily manipulate the backtest to sell more, but there is like actually kind of something behind it, like when you run it live, and that's why people don't necessarily hate it, because they run it live for 2 months to get great results. Eventually it blows up in month 3, but because there's some sort of underlying high risk strategy behind it, it doesn't immediately fail. So I think this is kind of similar to that in my opinion. Heavy amounts of manipulation, I wouldn't buy it because we honestly have nothing to go by, but because the guy seems rather clever, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of real strategy which is kind of embedded behind all of this. But unfortunately, without buying it, we're not necessarily able to tell. So guys, let me know if you do buy this bot, if you do test it out, because I'd be really curious to see what's driving the logic. So have yourselves a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video.